for something to happen to me. This waiting comes with trials and challenges. Nothing in life is free. I wish that somehow you tell me out aloud that on that day I'll be okay. But we'll never know, 'cause that's not the way it works. Help me find my way. My Lord, show me right from wrong. Give me light, make me strong. I know the road is long. Make me strong. Sometimes it just gets too much. I feel that I've lost touch. I know the road is long. Make me strong. I know I'm waiting, yearning for something known only to me. This waiting comes with trials and challenges. Life is one mystery. I wish that somehow you tell me out aloud that on that day you'll forgive me. But we'll never know, 'cause that's not the way it works. I beg for your mercy. My Lord, show me right from wrong. Give me light, make me strong. I know the road is.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Thank you for joining us for tonight's session, the Book of the World, Journeying with the Quran in 30 Nights. I would like to welcome my dear brother Hassan Lamy with me tonight. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Enlightened Thought. You can also follow us on Facebook, sydney.org.au. Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una wanfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna ilma. O Allah, teach us what benefits us and benefit us with what you have taught us and increase us in knowledge. Tonight's session will feature the following. In section 1, I will touch base on the notion of Islam as a message that is free from any hierarchical authority. Second, participation with Brother Hassan Lamy in the first part will highlight the notion of Asma'ullah al-Husna, the beautiful names of Allah. In the second part of tonight's session, I will introduce the meaning of the message of Islam as an enlivening message. إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. So the message of a biophilic enlivening approach to life. And Brother Hassan will finish off with approaching the topic of some of the important attributes of the faithful and the believers at the beginning of Surah Al-Anfal. Without further ado, let us now move to Sheikh Mohammed al-Dihnawi for the first recitation of the Holy Quran for tonight.
الرحيم واتل عليهم نبأ الذي آتيناه آياتنا فانسلخ منها فأتبعه الشيطان فكان من الغاوين.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Once again, let us embark on this journey together tonight. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-A'raf says, وَاتْلُوا عَلَيْهِمْ نَبَأَ الَّذِي آتَيْنَاهُ آيَاتِنَا فَانْسَلَخَ مِنْهَا فَأَتْبَعَهُ الشَّيْطَانُ فَكَانَ مِنَ الْغَاوِينَ. And naba in the Arabic language is different from khabar. Naba is a true and accurate story or account of something that happened in reality and will continue to happen in its lesson and trend. Tell them the story, the true and crossing story in its timeless message of the person whom we inspired with our guidance and signs, but who detached himself from it and who was then pursued by Satan until he turned into a rebel. وَلَوْ شِئْنَا لَرَفَعْنَاهُ بِهَا وَلَكِنَّهُ أَخْلَدَ إِلَى الْأَرْضِ وَاتَّبَعَ هَوَاهُ فَمَثَلُهُ كَمَثَلِ الْكَلْبِ إِنْ تَحْمِلْ عَلَيْهِ يَلْهَثْ أَوْ تَتْرُكْهُ يَلْهَثْ. Then Allah says, had we willed, we could have raised him with these signs to an exalted position, but he clung to his earthly life, to the lowest level of life, and followed his own desires. Such a person is like that of a lazy dog who always has its tongue hanging out, especially in a warm climate, whether you chase it away or leave it alone. My dear brothers and sisters, this story in the Quran talks about a renowned religious scholar during the time of Prophet Musa alayhi salam in the community of Israel, the people of Israel. And this respected scholar was granted, according to some narrations, Ismullah al-A'zam, the great name of Allah through which one can ask for any request that has to do with anything in life, and it shall be accepted. Before we delve into the lessons of this story and why the Quran selected this particular incident in history to teach us a lesson about the risks of carrying knowledge and how knowledge is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it can enlighten people, but on the other hand, it can destroy the holder of that knowledge. I will introduce this topic of decentralizing authority and de-linking, trying to remove authority from knowledge, authority from religion, authority from any good cause that we may come out with for people and for society. Because as we will see, the actual problem is not in knowledge itself, but it is rather in the very motive behind carrying this knowledge and the very purpose behind carrying this knowledge. There is a beautiful fable. It's called the fable of the fox and the drum. It says, a fox came to a forest in which a drum hung suspended from a tree. Whenever the wind blew against the branches of that tree, it set it in motion so that it struck the drum, and a great voice was heard coming out of it. The fox drew near out of curiosity to catch the sound of that mighty voice. But when he came close, he discovered that the drum was enormous. He was sure that there had to be an abundance of meat and substance in that drum. So he poured at it until he split it open. When he saw that it was hollow and had nothing inside, he said, I don't really know. Maybe the flimsiest things have the loudest voices. Maybe the flimsiest things have the loudest voices, while the mightiest are mute as the dead. My dear brothers and sisters, this fable carries with it a moral lesson for us in every day and age. This lesson is summarized as follows. Appearances are deceiving because we deceive ourselves. I will not be deceived by your long beard. I will not be deceived by your knowledge. I will not be deceived by your sharp speech and articulate language. I will not be deceived by the institutions you represent. I will not be deceived by your passion for a good cause. I will not be deceived and will not be cheated. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through the story of Bal'am, or in some narrations Bal'am bin Ba'ura, is trying to say to us, do not be deceived by the authority of knowledge, whether it's secular knowledge or religious knowledge. What counts at the end of the day is the purpose behind carrying this knowledge. Do we carry this knowledge in order to bring good to our society, in order to lift people from the slums of a marginalized life to one of a flourishing life? Or do we use knowledge to subjugate people to our own will and domination? One of the philosophers once said, if out of all the forms of evil in the world, there was one that I would have to strike, I would choose the will to dominate. This type of evil perhaps is the most dangerous in the world, the will to dominate. Dominating the other, dominating society, dominating the hearts, dominating the minds. One can use the best form of speech. One can draw on the best stories, but the question is, why are you saying it? Why are you coming out and addressing people? What is your ultimate motive? We see, for example, in the story of Faust, Dr. Faust, Goethe gives us the example of a doctor who had this innocent curiosity to help humanity and people. He realized that the knowledge he gained from the books and from his professional endeavor did not help the reality of people. And so he had to find that knowledge that would give him insight into himself and into how to make the world a better place. Ultimately and eventually, Dr. Faust sold his soul to Satan. And as we know, Satan betrayed him. And he struggled along the way in order to reach that enlightened knowledge. Because as we know, Satan never has the best interests of humanity at heart. But at the same time, we see in that novel that Goethe saved Dr. Faust in his ultimate fate. Although he went through all these mistakes, Upon reflecting, we will realize that the reason why Guti saved him is because Dr. Faust from the beginning had the intention and the motive to serve humanity with the knowledge he was seeking. Although he sought the knowledge through the wrong means, which is Satan, but the ultimate purpose was serving humanity. And we see in the story how he was building bridges and whatnot. But with Bal'am bin Ba'ura, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala show us in the Quran that despite having all these divine powers and signs, despite being favored with all these favors of God and blessings, he actually hawa, and that's the meaning of ittiba' al-hawa. To follow your desires is to actually fall from a very high position to the ground and collapse. How does the Quran present to us this ultimate existential tragic collapse of a scholar who was highly respected? I think the Quran here is teaching us a lesson that from the very beginning his intention was wrong. His goal was wrong. And most of the time we as human beings fall into this. We may have the wrong intention without being fully aware of it. And that is why Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbah. There is this need to always look into our underlying motives, underlying intentions. There is this need to be very stingy when it comes to the self, picking and detecting and dissecting every single layer of our motive prior to engaging. My dear brothers and sisters, the Quran speaks of obliterated faces and featureless faces. نطمس وجوها ونردها على أدبارها. This imagery and symbolism is very telling. Allah says there are people who live in this world symbolically with featureless faces. This actually means that their moral failure in life as a result of not having this deep self-awareness will make them look backwards as a punishment. In other words, the wiped out face signifies a wiped out will and a wiped out sense of direction. That's why we say al-qibla qabla al-takbir. Having the right orientation, the right direction comes before takbir, even in salat, to teach us that we need to get the ultimate purpose right before we talk about the details and engage in anything. I'll finish off with the lesson we learned from Bal'am bin Ba'ura. The lesson is never sell your soul or your mind to any authority. Do not let any form of authority monopolize you and cheat your mind and your common sense. Prophet Muhammad teaches us this lesson, and I'll finish off with this. That in the modern age, Richard Nixon, the American president, once said, the reason why we were not capable of chopping off the head of Islam is because we realized that Islam has no head. In other words, we realize that Islam has no priest, Islam has no pope, Islam has no patriarchal hierarchy that dominates how it is presented in the world and who has the right to speak about it and to live it. The universality of Islam is a decentralized universality because it relates to all people. It starts with Allah Rabbul Alameen, the Lord of the world, and it finishes with An-Nas, all people. And so Prophet Muhammad once said to one of his companions, Istafti qalbak, consult your heart. The uncorrupted fitrah, this good nature and the sound intellect. You have come to ask about righteousness? He said, yes, Ya Rasulullah. He answered, consult your heart. Righteousness is that about which the soul feels tranquil and the heart feels at peace and sin is what creates restlessness in the soul. استفتي قلبك ولو أفتاك الناس وأفتوك وأفتوك. Even if people of authority give you all these complicated answers, go back to your sound fitra and consult it. If Bal'am bin Ba'ura is described as a dog in the Quran, we know that a prostitute in the Islamic tradition was granted paradise for actually watering a dog. This narration we need to teach to our children. A prostitute was given by God paradise because passing by a panting dog near a well and seeing that the dog was about to die of thirst, she took off her shoe, tying it with her scarf. She drew out some water for it, so God forgave her because of that. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the lesson we learn. Will you be deceived by deceiving yourself? Let us reflect on this and apply it into our everyday life. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين. And now we will move to Sheikh Al-Dihnawi for the following recitation of the Quran for Brother Hassan Lamy's section.
Hassan.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ولله الأسماء الحسنى فادعوه بها وذروا الذين يلحدون في أسمائه سيجزون ما كانوا يعملون.
Thank you, Akh Mohammed, for that eye-opening description of the verse about Bal'am Ba'ura. Assalamu alaikum, dear brothers and sisters. Before I talk about Surah Al-A'raf and the scaffolding of Surah Al-A'raf and the verse 180, Lillahi al-Asma' al-Husna, just to finish off from yesterday's talk about the concept of loneliness, how we can tackle this. If you remember, I mentioned the first thing, to come to acceptance and realization that is the fate of humanity, because this acceptance allows us to detach ourselves and, as you said, to dislink ourselves from all these partners that Quran calls ash-shufa'a or the ash-shuraka in the verse that we discussed yesterday, and you start to focus on your self-growth and self-promotion. The second point was, from time to time, have this physical loneliness, in which we said 5 things that you need to do. Number 3, try to live in presence. The hadith of Imam Ali we covered, ما فات مضى وما سيأتيك فأين فقم فاغتنم الفرصة بين العدمين. That what has passed is gone, and what is coming, where is it? So try to utilize the time that you have in presence and live between the two absent situations. Number 3 is try to enjoy silence from time to time. Silence can be of 4 types. Silence in terms of the audio, silence in terms of the visual silence, silence in terms of at the level of the mind, that where you have silence as well, and silence in terms of movement and behavior. So that's why in Islamic context, night is recommended to enjoy this connection with God. Why? Because you have all different forms of silences, and that's why maybe one of the reasons at night, if you're sick and you have pain, this pain gets intensified and you start to notice it even further, because you have all these different forms of silences. And the last thing is when you realize that you're alone, when you go from outside to inside and you realize that this pain is common to all humanity, you develop what is called love and compassion. And I wanted to finish yesterday with this quote from Rumi, where he says, grief can be the garden of compassion. Your pain can become greatest ally in your life search for love and wisdom. So that was from yesterday to finish off what I wanted to say. Now, Surah Al-A'raf, let's go through the scaffolding of Surah Al-A'raf. Surah Al-A'raf, most of the Mufassirin and scholars say that it is the most of the surah is in the Meccan period, and some of the verses, maybe the verse from 161 to 165, is the Medinian verse. There are two major topics discussed in this chapter. The first one is about the prophets and previous nations. So different prophets are discussed, with the most focus being on Adam alayhi salam and Moses alayhi salam. The second topic is about Tawheed and hereafter, the Day of Judgment, in which there is this drama of a human promise to God in which he has to fulfill. And you can see the connection between the two, where you start from Tawheed, you end with Day of Judgment. In between, you have the previous nations, the previous prophets, in order to see what's happening. So you have Adam being mentioned, Nuh, Hud, Salih, Lut, Shu'aib, Musa, in which the story of Musa is in full detail discussed in this chapter. This chapter, when I was looking, you can divide it into 20 parts. I'm not going to mention all the parts, but some of the parts, for example, it starts with the notion of how the book came down for the humanity and for the guidance. Then the creation of Adam alayhi salam, then about the human growth and evolution, and then it goes to the story of Iblis, and then the story of the descent of Adam. Then Ashab al-A'raf, that's where the name of A'raf comes from. A'raf means, there is a discussion between scholars, what is A'raf? There's a difference of opinions between Sunnis and Shias, but it is basically a place which is high and it overlooks the paradise and the hell. If we get time later on, we may talk about this. And then at the end, after going through all this, it changes to Prophet in the last few verses, which I will touch upon, and tell Prophet what lessons and trends you may take from these stories and how you can approach these issues in life. So that was a brief talk in a nutshell about the Surah Al-A'raf in terms of its structure and scaffolding. Now going to verse 180. وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءِ الْحُسْنَى. To God exclusively belongs the beautiful names and attributes. فَادْعُوهُ بِهَا. So you may ask God and call him using these beautiful names. وَذَرُوا الَّذِينَ يَلْحِدُونَ فِي أَسْمَائِهِ. And live alone without causing any pain those who reject these names. سَيُجْزَوْنَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. And they will be punished of what they were doing. Here, one of the most important concepts in Islamic sciences is discussed, and that is the beautiful names of God. Al-Ism, usually you call me Hassan, I call you Mohammed. We use Ism is just to single out someone from another person without caring about the substance of that Ism. Well, Ism or name in Quranic context, it refers to an attribute. So when I say Hassan, Hassan means that beautiful manner, the beautiful look. So it reflects that. It's not just simply a person, an individual who is separated and different to another individual. Rather, it carries a meaning. So here, all the good virtues in the world that we experience belongs to God.
It's a simmer.
Simmer. Exactly. So sima, that's where the ism comes, has two roots. One is sama, which means highness, and the other one is sima, is the when an animal is basically they put that seal on them to make it different from others. So in a way, this name gives a highness in a way that reflects an attribute, manifests
A signature.
a signature, exactly. So what is interesting here is the fad'uhu biha, that God is teaching us how to make dua. As some scholars say, if you want to see how deep you are, see how much dua you can make. How many minutes actually you can sit down and make a dua, meaning making a supplication, because dua reflects the wishes and the desires and the regrets of a broken heart. Because if you don't have a broken heart, you cannot make a proper dua. When you read مثلا Abu Hamza, this dua Abu Hamza, it cannot be from someone who is just happy. There is nothing wrong with happiness, but you have to feel, if you remember yesterday we talked about different types of loneliness, you have to feel this sense of separation from the beloved to make a beautiful dua. And that's why in the past we had great poets. In the modern time, because of the culture of amusement, entertainment, and the short attention span, we don't have this time to sit down and properly make dua. So I want to mention 3 points here. Number one, try to be familiar with the names of God. What do I mean by that? Usually we remember God or mention God by a few names. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. But God here is saying, actually for every state of being and existence and feeling and sentiment and emotion, try to call me through a specific name. مثلا you are in a problem, Ya Kashif al-Kurub. You're in a position of compassion, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. You're in a position of regret from what you have done, Ya Sattar al-Uyub. Why don't we connect like that with God?
Confusion, Ya Hadi.
Ya Hadi. If you're living a confusion, Ya Hadi al-Mudillin. And that's, I think, one of the beauties of Dua Joshan al-Kabir. You have 100 parts, each part 10 names, indicating a different state of being. So it's giving you a minimum of 1,000 states, 1,000 emotions, 1,000 sentiments. Why don't we connect with God in different states? And imagine the psychological security and safety and the emotional stability you will get, because God represents infinity. Tawheed represents this universal existence. And now, because that allows me to know myself. As you said, confusion, I know I'm at the state of confusion, I connect with the infinity. Tawakkul, Ya Muhibbil Mutawakkilin. I'm in a state of hardship. Let's say I'm going to an exam, or I want something to happen. I connect with that name. Ya Mujib al Muttarrin. I'm in a state of turbulence where I'm suffering. Ya Mujib al Muttarrin. Ya Mujib al Da'wa al Muttarrin. With different names. It doesn't have to be exactly mentioned in the dua or Quran. Exercise your creativity, because Quran says وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءِ الْحُسْنَى. It says all the beautiful virtues. It doesn't say specific virtues. Any beautiful virtue, try to exercise your creativity, and depending on your sentimental position in the world, connect to Him. Number two, تَخَلَّقُ بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. God is telling us, you want to know me? Let's treat God as a being. Na'udhu billah, but let's treat God as a being. You want to know me? What sort of moral compass I have? This is my moral compass. These beautiful names. تَخَلَّقُ بِأَخْلَاقِ اللَّهِ. Attain the morality, the set of virtues that God has. What is the set of virtues God exhibit and manifest in this world? Let's say the 99 names. Try to be the manifestation of mercy. Try to be the manifestation of compassion. Try to be the manifestation of al-qudra power, try to be the manifestation of al-ilm and knowledge, try to be the manifestation of mercy, forgiveness, al-ghufran, sattar al-uyub, covering others' shortcomings, try to help others to achieve their potentials and their aims in life. So that's the second point. And the third point, what the mystics talk about, what is meant by proximity to God. When we say, I want to be close to God, what do we mean? The mystics say that this is not about physical proximity. Rather, it is about how much of the names of God are you manifesting, are you representing and manifesting in your life. If this manifestation and representation is 50%, you're 50% close to God. Which stems from the second point, تخلقوا بأخلاق الله. So if you want to exercise closeness and proximity to God, let us attain these names. And in Surah Al-A'raf, in other verses which we didn't cover, it teaches us some of the ways of supplication. So now we learn to supplicate. Let us learn the names of God, which correlates to our state of being, which allows also self-introspection and self-knowledge. But also, for example, at the end of the Surah Al-A'raf, وَاذْكُرْ رَبَّكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ تَضَرُّعًا وَخِيفَةً. And that's when the surah at the end turns to Prophet, tells him what to do. Tadarru in Arabic, al-dhar is the udder, where for example, let's say the lamb goes to be fed by his mom or by its mom, goes to the udder, and to go to the udder you have to be humble, you have to settle, you have to sit down. So tadarru is that state of humility and humbleness, because as long as you don't feel that state, you cannot supplicate, because you feel that you are independent, you feel that you have the will, you can make the change in the world, till you feel that tadarru, as if you are going to the udder, وَخِيفَةً, that you have a sense of fear. The fear is not from the majesty of God, the fear is not from God, God is merciful. The fear is from our actions, fear is from our shortcomings. Because who am I, this sinful person who's committed every possible sin, going to the Lord of the Lords and asking for forgiveness, asking to be granted the wishes that I want. So this is one way that we can achieve. And imagine someone who can exercise humility and humbleness, that person in the society is not going to be amongst the mutakabbirin, is not going to be amongst the arrogant people who wants to be authoritative, who wants to subjugate others, who wants to take others' rights and violate their rights. Why? Because you have humiliated yourself and humbled yourself before the Lords of the Lord. So when you go out, you have a heart which is settled, you have a heart which is purified, you have a heart which has found its serenity and peace with وَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءِ الْحُسْنَى. So I'll finish with that. Do you have any point to add, Ustad Muhammad?
I think I would pose this question to our dear viewers. What do you think of Asma'ullah al-Husna? How do we approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do you think Asma'ullah al-Husna allow us to approach God through His meanings and through the values which emerge from His names, as opposed to approaching God as an essence which is beyond
our comprehension?
So I pose this question to you, and if you would like to mention a beautiful name of God that you most connect to, please share this with us with a short story. We would be very happy to read and learn from.
Hassan.
Perhaps now we can go for a 5-minute break. Stick around and we'll see you soon, inshallah.
to happen to me. This waiting comes with trials and challenges. Nothing in life is free. I wish that somehow you tell me out aloud that on that day I'll be الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق البارئ المصور الغفار القهار الوهاب الرزاق الفتاح العليم القابض الباسط الخافض الرافع المعز المذل السميع البصير الحكم العدل اللطيف الخبير الحليم العظيم الغفور الشكور العلي الكبير الحفيظ المقيت الحسيب الجليل الكريم الرقيب المجيب الواسع الحكيم الودود المجيد الشهيد الحق الوكيل القوي المتين الولي الحميد المحصي المبدي المعيد المحيي المميت الحي القيوم الواجد الواحد الصمد القادر المقتدر المقدم المؤخر الأول الآخر الظاهر الباطن الوالي المتعالي البر التواب المنتقم العفو مالك الملك ذو الجلال والإكرام.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear brothers and sisters, welcome back. Let us now move to the first Quran recitation for the first participation in our second part for tonight's session.
الرحمن الرحيم إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran in Surah Al-Anfal, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. O you who have believed and live in a state of serenity and peace, answer the call of God and His Messenger to what brings you to life. My dear brothers and sisters, in an age where necrophilia is among the prevailing cultures that pretty much regulates and shapes our outlook to life, the question of إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ becomes vital for our understanding and insight. When I say the necrophilic personality, I do not mean this to be limited to the pathological definition of this type, namely those who take pleasure in engaging in intercourse with dead bodies. Necrophilia is an orientation to life that is opposed to biophilia, as Eric Fromm beautifully classified both. So biophilia is love of life, necrophilia, love of death. You may ask, give us some examples to enlighten the maqam, to enlighten this platform of discussion, this station. What do you mean by necrophilic? When we hear, for example, religious discourses talking about adhab al-qabr, you know, all sorts of suffering that would take place in the grave. When we hear this overly concerned interest in knowing about death and talking about death and over lecturing about death and over preaching about death
and after death and what happens in heaven and hell
and what happens in heaven and hell, I come to an understanding that there is a necrophilic, a hidden necrophilic culture underlying this way of thinking in our society. And I'm talking in the religious context because I come from this community. And ya ayyuha alladhina amanu alaykum anfusakum. You know, start with yourself, focus on yourself, and we're part of this collective self. Nevertheless, this necrophilic attitude and mindset, I believe, is problematic for various reasons. But the reason why we need to revisit this ayah in the Quran in light of the existing culture is because it helps us change and transform this mindset and replace it with something more optimistic, less pessimistic, more positive, less negative, more vibrant, less gloom and doom.
More life oriented rather than death oriented.
Absolutely, more life oriented. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ, He is teaching us a lesson that the message of Islam is about bringing life. And this process of enlivening your community, enlivening yourself, enlivening your people is not limited to Muslims. This is a universal Muslim condition that we find everywhere. And so when the Quran, for example, speaks about death, the Quran does not introduce death to us in the context of talking about it, but rather in the context of living life. So death is not something we can talk about all the time. Some may say we need to prepare for it, so we have to remind ourselves. But even the Quran gives us a biophilic approach to even to death. When Allah says, وَلْتَنْظُرْ نَفْسٌ مَا قَدَّمَتْ لِغَدْ, the taqdeem, the preparation is about living a virtuous life in this world, and that is how you prepare for death. You live and you continuously struggle in order to bring life to the world, to bring life to your community, and to bring life to the generations in your day and age. And so the Quran says, لِنَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا الَّذِي خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةَ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ أَيُّكُمْ أَحْسَنُ عَمَلًا in Surah Al-Mulk. That Allah created us to test us with the actions, with the struggles, and with how we will live in this world. So there is no, I think, meaning in over talking about death in our discourses, given that when someone, for example, we know that death is a guest. We never know when it will arrive, but it is a guest as described in the tradition.
It's a forced guest.
Exactly. You don't talk about preparing for receiving the guest. You actually engage in the preparation of the house. You set the table, you bring the food, you get your children or your family members seated, and that's how we prepare for receiving the guest, and not by talking about it. And this is why the Prophet said, وَكَفَى بِالْمَوْتِ وَاعِظًا. Death in itself as a phenomenon is a lesson. So there's no need to exhaust our energy to focus on it, because this is subconsciously contributing to the creation of a necrophilic culture. Even in our vocabulary, we have, a degree of necrophilic tendency. When, for example, in Arabic we say, I love her until death, or I love her like death. أحبك حب موت, or أحبك حتى الموت. Again, this is, I think, a problematic and pathological reflection of a necrophilic culture, even in our language. Eric Fromm says that one of the problematic metaphors we use in love is I fall in love, or I fell in love with her. So there is this sense of hopelessness and fall, whereas we need to replace these metaphors in our language with something more biophilic. I stand in love, as opposed to I fall in love. And so we have to revise our vocabulary and our language in order to create that new culture. How did Prophet Muhammad do this? إِذَا دَعَاكُمْ لِمَا يُحْيِيكُمْ. The first thing the Prophet did was change the names from negative to positive. One of the three most interesting names that the Prophet changed, one was Harb, which signified war. Two was Murra, which signified bitterness. Three was Hazan, which signifies a rough, hard land that's uneven. And once he came across a little girl and he asked her about her name. She said, my name is Asiya. The Prophet said, Anti Jamila, you are beautiful. And that was the name the Prophet chose for her, because he knew that names actually reflect, as Brother Hassan mentioned earlier, in our character, in our behavior, in our ideas. And so I think this is a very important thing to keep in mind, that our language conditions how we live. And so when the Prophet was escaping from the torture of Quraysh with one of his companions, and the Quraysh announced that there will be a 70 camel prize for anyone who finds the Prophet and his companion. One of the people who was searching for the Prophet, his name was Burayda ibn al-Husayb al-Aslami. So when Burayda found the Prophet, obviously people thought that the Prophet would be frightened, especially his companion. But the Prophet said to him, Ma ismuk, what's your name? He said, Burayda. Then when the Prophet heard this beautiful name, which gives the meaning of coolness, he said to his companion, Baruda amruna wa saluh. There is hope. With Burayda there is hope. The intense heat out of anxiety and worry is now cooling down. Then he said to Burayda, from which tribe do you come? From which region do you come? He said, min bani Sahm min Aslam. Aslam means peace and this sense of security you give to people. And so the Prophet said, Salimna wa kharuja sahmuk. Then now I am sure we are in good hands. So again, you see how the Prophet was an example in giving us an optimistic worldview and optimistic attitude to life. I'll finish off with why this biophilic culture is important. I think it teaches us that life is beautiful and worthwhile to live in its diversity and in its multi-layered beauty and creativity. When someone, for example, is used to traveling back home from work through one pathway, and this pathway all of a sudden is locked down, he is gonna have to wait until someone comes and escorts him, or until they open this pathway again. But someone who has more than one pathway and explores more than one pathway in returning home, even if they close and lock down the one he used to use, he would still have other pathways. The reason, my dear brothers and sisters, why our society today gets into a state of moral panic when someone dies is because we are a necrophilic society and not a biophilic. When we know that there are people who are still alive and suffer from poverty, suffer from humiliation, suffer from anxiety, we don't care for them. But when one individual dies, we rush. Sociologists say one of the possible justifications and explanations for this is because we are so concerned with control. When the state brings out its forces and says, I am sealing off this area to show that I am in control, I am in domination, I am putting everything under my control. And so
don't you think that reflects also a myopic vision, as if
absolutely
there's only one way to return home if one of our hopes falls down?
Absolutely.
Exactly, like someone passes away, we rush to that person, but there are many people in our family and relatives and friends who are alive and we haven't seen them.
Absolutely, and it brings us to the final point here, which is beautifully illustrated in The Name of the Rose, which I mentioned in previous lines, one of my favorite novels by Umberto Eco. He talks about how in the abbey, where the monks were debating whether Jesus Christ used to laugh or not, the major concern was control behind all these debates. And towards the end of the novel, after 7 monks were killed, and it was promoted as if they were committing suicide to cover the truth, William of Baxterville, who is the detective, he asks the trustee of the library, who is this traditional monk who controlled all the library and all the access to the books. He had disallowed any monk to access Aristotle's book on laughter, the Commedia. He says his name was Jorg. So William says to him, why is it so alarming that you consider laughter to be bad?
Kutub al-Dhalal.
Exactly, Kutub al-Dhalal or Kutub al-Inhiraf. Then Jorg answers, laughter kills fear, and without fear there can be no faith, because without fear of the devil there is no more need of God. So as you can see, the instilling fear is about keeping people under control, whereas laughter is that sense of freedom, that sense of liberation from all control. You can laugh at a tyrant, even if you cannot bring his entire throne down. But that sense of laughter gives you the spiritual freedom from his control over how you feel and how you react and respond.
And that's why in the positive psychology, sense of humor is defined as facing difficulties and sufferings in life with a positive vibe.
Hassan. So let us cultivate this optimistic culture, inshallah. And without further ado, we'll move to the final verse for tonight's session with Sheikh Mohammed al-Dehnawi.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم واعلموا أن الله يحول بين المرء وقلبه وأنه إليه تحشرون.
Thank you, Sheikh Muhammad Sadiq, our media person, Muhammad Wehby, for the enlightening description about this verse, لما يحييكم. I'll be talking about Surah Al-Anfal, verse 2 to 4, about some of the descriptions given about the mu'mineen, the faithful people, the people who enter the city of safety and security and sanctity and tranquility. The context of the verse or the surah, the chapter, goes back to the war of Badr. So as you know, just to give a bit of context quickly, the story goes as following. After the Muslims migrated to Medina from Mecca, the people of Medina welcomed them. That's why they called Al-Ansar, those who supported the cause of Islam. During this process, the people of Quraysh basically took all the belongings, the houses, the money, the wealth that the migrators had, Al-Muhajirin, had to Medina. They took them away. That's why most of the people who migrated to Medina, they were poor. They were living in a place called As-Siffa, Ashab As-Siffa. So in the year 1 or 2 of the Hijrah migration, there was a report given to the Prophet that there is a business trip being taken by the people of Quraysh carrying lots of wealth. Prophet used this opportunity in order to claim some of the wealth which were basically seized and stolen from the migrators. So they went to basically attack this caravan and take their rights back. The story continues. The Quraysh know they come with a full army, about, they say, 950. Muslims were between 300 317, and the two army face. There was it wasn't a very equal war in terms of the number and the amount of preparation that the opposition had. The Quraysh had, they had 950 people. All of them had camels, they had horses. But at the end, the Muslims won the battle, and the Battle of Badr is very famous in the Islamic history. But what is interesting in our Islamic discussion, whenever we want to glorify the Muslims, we remember Badr. We say the 313, the companions. We remember these fighters. But Islam and Quran does not have any what we call mujamala, mudahana. Doesn't have this.
No sugarcoating.
No sugarcoating. Even if it sees that the greatest people and faithful people are falling into the trap of moral issues and vices, it comes and intervenes and reminds them. So the context goes back to this story, whereby now the companions, the fighters, the faithful community, they are asking about the spoils of the war. Because as I said, their wealth was seized, stolen. Now there is an argument. I killed 4 people from the opposition, I should get more, so on and so forth. So verse 2 to 4 comes to give some of the description of the real mu'mineen. Some of the ahadith says it is revealed to describe Imam Ali alayhi salam and Abu Dhar. But regardless, it's a timeless verse. It can be given, this description can be given to anyone. So let's go through it. إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم. That mu'minun, those who belong to the city of tranquility, are those, if God is remembered. How is God remembered? God is remembered through different actions. Let's say you see a poor person. Let's say you see a cause of God in your way. God can be remembered in different ways. The verses, so on and so forth. وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. Wajilat is usually translated as fear, but wajilat is not fear. It's been used 5 times in Quran, and when we analyze this 5-time usage in Quran, we see that it describes an internal disturbance and turbulence which gives us a warning about future due to 2 things. One, due to our shortcomings and the recognition and acknowledgement that we have not done our responsibilities to the full extent. That I'm aware I was responsible for this task, but I did not do it. That's one. And 2 is, as Quran says, maqam rabbi. They fear the position of the power and the majesty. Why? Again, it goes back to the responsibility that I did not do. So here, the mu'mineen are self-critical about their duties and responsibilities that they know they did not do it to the full extent. When I was reading the literature on virtue ethics, I wasn't sure what to say this wajila is. I said self-appraisal. What do you think, Akh Mohammed?
Perhaps it's critical self-vigilance.
Yeah, possibly. So this self-appraisal and self-vigilance or self-evaluation, it seems like it indicates that وَإِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. And when the verses are recited in a sequential manner and in a calm manner, the faith increases. Again, give us this indication that faith is like knowledge. You can never say that now I am a mu'min, I reached faith. You never can say that. Faith is something of multiple levels. It's something that has graduation, and you can just go from one level to another. زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. This aman increases. You can never claim I fully feel this serenity inside my heart. Always there is this sense of worry and anxiety in the heart. And the more you connect with God through Asma al-Husna, the more this aman, iman, security, sense of tranquility increases. وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. And they rely upon their God through the power of tawakkul. As Allama Tabatabai says, tawakkul is like a runner in the running with the hurdles. Tawakkul does not remove the hurdles in life. Tawakkul increases this internal power to have more power to jump over the hurdles. So that's the power of tawakkul. Because of the time limitation, I leave verse 4 to another occasion. And with that, I would like to summarize my points tonight as this following recommendation. Choose one of the names of God and try to practice, or as Aristotle says, habituate that name of God in your life during this Shahr Ramadan. Choose that name. And usually the name that you choose reflects something about your personality. To you, Akh Mohammed.
Hassan, thank you very much, Brother Hassan. And I'll summarize the crux of my contribution tonight with a beautiful tradition by our final messenger of God, sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, who once said, فَإِذَا قَامَتِ السَّاعَةِ وَفِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَسِيلَةٌ فَإِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَنْ يَغْرِسْهَا فَلْيَفْعَلْ. If the day of resurrection is about to happen and you had a palm shoot in your hand, plant it if you can, because the real biophilic, the real life-giving approach and spirit should begin within our own souls, even if the world is about to end. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wassalamu alaikum. Wa ahsantum, Akh Mohammed. Barakallahu feek.
الرحمن الرحيم الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر الخالق الباري